Captain Amanda Brooks stood on the bridge of the U.S. Curiosity, Earth's first deep space expedition vessel, as the massive Imperial ship materialized before them near Alpha Centauri. The vessel's hull gleamed with an iridescent sheen that made it look like a cosmic soap bubble, stretching nearly 2 kilometers from bow to stern. Its name, the Eternal Majesty, was written in shifting holographic letters that changed color every few seconds. "Well," Amanda said, maintaining her professional composure, "I guess first contact just got a lot more interesting." She straightened her standard-issue United Earth Fleet uniform, a practical navy blue ensemble that had been designed for actual space travel rather than pageantry. The main view screen crackled to life, revealing what would become the most viral image in human history. The Imperial delegation stood in what they clearly thought was an awe-inspiring formation. Their Grand Marshal, positioned front and center, wore shoulder pads so massive they required their own gravity generators, creating a peculiar wobbling effect as the technology struggled to keep them properly oriented. Lieutenant Jack Thompson, manning the communication station, made a strange choking sound. "Captain, I'm receiving their transmission, but I need a moment to." He pressed his fist against his mouth, shoulders shaking with suppressed laughter. The Imperial officers wore helmets that could only be described as cosmic fruit arrangements. Each one was adorned with crystalline structures, shaped like various astronomical phenomena. One sported a miniature spiral galaxy that actually rotated. Another had a cluster of twinkling stars that played what seemed to be celestial mood music. "Greetings, primitive. Esteemed representatives of Earth," the Grand Marshal began, his smart fabric cape billowing dramatically in the zero-gravity environment of their chamber. The cape, programmed to flutter majestically, seemed to have a mind of its own as it wrapped around his helmet's miniature black hole decoration. Commander Tom Bradley leaned close to Amanda's chair and whispered, "Did they really just call us primitive while wearing disco ball hats?" The Grand Marshal continued his prepared speech, either oblivious to or choosing to ignore the poorly concealed snickers from the human crew. "We come representing the mighty Galactic Empire, rulers of 1,000 solar systems, masters of—" He paused, batting away his cape which had become entangled with his shoulder pad's gravity generator. "Masters of technologies beyond your comprehension." The malfunction happened in slow motion. The interference between the cape's smart fabric programming and the shoulder pad's gravity field created a cascade effect. The Grand Marshal's fruit helmet began to tilt at an increasingly alarming angle. His attempts to correct it only made things worse, as the motion caused his cape to wrap around his torso like an enthusiastic python. "By the eternal stars, someone adjust the gravitational calibration," he commanded, his voice rising in pitch as he started to spin slowly on his axis. The other Imperial officers rushed to help, but their own elaborate costumes got in the way. One officer's miniature asteroid belt helmet collided with another's nebula-inspired shoulder decoration, sending them both pinwheeling across the chamber. The bridge of the U.S. Curiosity had descended into barely controlled chaos. Security Officer Ryan Mitchell had to leave his post, tears streaming down his face. Dr. Rachel Anderson, the ship's legal advisor, was recording everything on her phone while trying to maintain some semblance of diplomatic professionalism, and failing miserably. "Captain," Jack Thompson managed between wheezes, "they're requesting emergency docking procedures to restore the dignity of the Empire." Amanda Brooks, to her credit, kept her voice steady as she responded, "Permission granted." She waited until the transmission ended before allowing herself a small grin. "Send a copy of that recording to Earth with priority flagging, and someone please help Security Officer Mitchell off the floor. He's going to hurt himself laughing." As the Eternal Majesty's docking procedures began, Amanda couldn't help but wonder if the history books would remember this as humanity's first step into the galactic community, or as the day Earth's first deep space mission turned into an intergalactic blooper reel. Either way, She had a feeling this was just the beginning of a very interesting diplomatic relationship. The docking procedure between the Eternal Majesty and U.S. Curiosity took exactly 47 minutes, not because of technical limitations, but because Imperial Protocol Officer X-Thrix insisted each minute represented one sacred step of the First Contact Protocol. The 43rd minute symbolizes the harmonious alignment of gravitational waves. X-Thrix explained through the comm system, his crystalline helmet now featuring what appeared to be a miniature interpretive dance ensemble made of light. Please observe in respectful silence. Lieutenant Jack Thompson muted their end of the communication. Captain, I think their helmet dancers are doing the Macarena. Focus, Jack, Amanda Brooks commanded, though her lips twitched. We need to at least pretend we're taking this seriously. She glanced at her tablet, which was already filling with messages from Earth's diplomatic corps, mostly strings of emoji, and OMG is DES real. The ships finally connected with a ceremonial hiss of airlocks. Thrix led a procession of Imperial officers aboard the Curiosity, each wearing what Dr. Rachel Anderson quietly dubbed disco diplomatic realness. Their anti-gravity capes created a shimmer effect in the corridor lights, like a cosmic curtain having an identity crisis. We shall now commence the dance of peaceful intentions, X-Thrix announced, activating a holographic display that filled the Curiosity's reception area with swirling patterns of light. Please observe the sacred movements that have united thousands of species in harmony. What followed would later be described by Commander Tom Bradley as a cross between interpretive dance and someone trying to swat invisible space mosquitoes. The Imperial officers moved in precise, geometric patterns, their gravity-assisted shoulder pads swaying like mechanical wings. That's when the accident happened. Jack Thompson, trying to adjust the environmental controls for the Imperial delegation's comfort, accidentally activated his personal playlist. The opening beats of Stayin' Alive echoed through the ship's external speakers at full volume. The Imperial Dance of Peace synchronized perfectly with the disco classic. "Oh no," whispered Security Officer Ryan Mitchell, already reaching for his phone. The Imperial officers, committed to their choreography, couldn't stop. Their programmed smart fabric capes and anti-gravity accessories pulsed in time with the music. X-Thrix's helmet dancers seamlessly transitioned into what could only be described as a Saturday Night Fever routine. Lieutenant Thompson, Captain Brooks managed, her face impressively neutral. "Please tell me you're not recording this." "No, ma'am," Thompson replied, then quickly added, "but the ship's automatic logs are. For diplomatic purposes." The Grand Marshal, who had finally recovered his dignity after the spinning incident, burst into the reception area. "What is the meaning of?" He stopped, watching in horror as his elite diplomatic corps bounced and swayed to Earth's ancient disco rhythm. "It's a traditional Earth greeting," Dr. Anderson improvised quickly. "We're honored that your sacred dance aligns so well with our cultural music." The Imperial officers, unable to break protocol mid-ceremony, continued their performance. Their expressions suggested they were dying inside, but their capes and helmets seemed to be enjoying themselves immensely, adding extra flourishes to each beat. "The synchronicity is remarkable," the Grand Marshal conceded stiffly, watching as X-Thrix's helmet dancers led a perfect hustle line. Commander Bradley leaned over to Captain Brooks. "Ma'am, we're trending on every social media platform back home. #SpaceDisco is breaking records. The dance of peaceful intentions has never been so energetically received." X-Thrix noted when the song finally ended, his cape still twitching to phantom beats. "We have thousands more traditional Earth songs," Thompson offered innocently. "Would you like to see how they match with your other ceremonial dances?" The look of pure panic on the Imperial officers' faces was answer enough. Captain Brooks cleared her throat. "Perhaps we should proceed with the formal diplomatic discussions." She paused, then added with perfect diplomacy, "unless there are more ceremonial requirements." "No," the Grand Marshal said quickly. "I mean, we have fulfilled the sacred obligations. Let us continue with less rhythmic proceedings. As they moved toward the conference room, Thompson swore he saw one of the junior Imperial officers save a copy of Stayin' Alive when he thought no one was looking. The Imperial flagship's dining hall looked like someone had given a disco ball unlimited decorating budget. Crystalline chandeliers floated through the air on anti-gravity generators, occasionally bumping into each other with melodic chimes. The walls shifted between different nebula patterns, which might have been impressive if they hadn't kept freezing and displaying error messages in alien script. "Please be seated." The Grand Marshal gestured to chairs that hovered slightly above the floor. "We have prepared a feast worthy of Earth's first deep space expedition crew." Engineering Officer Mike Rodriguez eyed his floating chair suspiciously. "You know, regular chairs work just fine in artificial gravity. But these are quantum comfort enhancement thrones," X-Thrix explained proudly. "They analyze your molecular structure and adjust to your exact specifications for optimal dining posture." Captain Amanda Brooks sat down carefully, only to have her chair immediately recline to a near-horizontal position. "I don't typically eat lying down," she mentioned, trying to maintain her dignity while practically sliding under the table. "The algorithm suggests this is the ideal angle for human digestive efficiency," X-Thrix insisted, while Commander Tom Bradley quietly helped pull his captain back to a sitting position. The first course arrived via what the Empire called their molecular gastronomy teleportation grid. The humans watched as their hosts activated a massive device that looked suspiciously like a microwave with delusions of grandeur. "Behold our molecular destabilizer in action," the Grand Marshal announced. "This technology can transform raw materials into any culinary creation imaginable." Rodriguez studied the device, then pulled out his phone and showed everyone a picture. "That's funny, because my grandmother has the exact same thing. She calls it a food processor." "Impossible," X-Thrix sputtered. "This is advanced Imperial technology that took centuries to perfect." "Does yours also have a tendency to heat things unevenly and make popcorn?" Rodriguez asked innocently. "Because there's a simple fix for that." The Grand Marshal quickly changed the subject by activating the dining hall's pride and joy, the all-knowing stellar database. The air above the table filled with a three-dimensional map of charted space. "These red markers indicate mysterious quantum anomalies we've spent decades studying," he explained, pointing to various spots on the map. Navigator Emily Parker squinted at one of the markers. "That's a coffee stain," she said confidently. "See how it's got that distinctive ring where someone set their mug down? Preposterous. This is a Class 7 spatial disturbance that our scientists have been analyzing for." The Grand Marshal paused as Parker pulled out a napkin, reached up, and wiped one of the anomalies away. "And that cluster over there," she continued, pointing to another section of the map, "isn't an ancient spacefaring civilization. Someone had a sandwich near the holographic projector. I can see the mustard marks." The Imperial scientists present began frantically reviewing their decades of research, muttering about recalibrating analysis parameters while frantically wiping down their equipment. Lieutenant Jack Thompson, who had been unusually quiet since the Stayin' Alive incident, raised his hand. "Quick question about your star charts. Are those constellation lines drawn based on cosmic significance, or did someone just play connect the dots when they were bored during a long shift?" The resulting silence was broken only by the sound of Dr. Rachel Anderson trying to turn her laugh into a cough. "We should proceed with the main course," the Grand Marshal announced stiffly. He gestured to a server who approached with what appeared to be a covered silver platter, only to trip on his anti-gravity cape. The cover flew off, revealing what looked suspiciously like rehydrated space rations arranged in an artistic pattern. "Is that Tang?" Commander Bradley asked, peering at his drink. "Because I'm pretty sure we invented that." Captain Brooks kicked him under the table, but the damage was done. The Imperial hosts called for an immediate recess to verify the authenticity of their culinary database, leaving the humans alone in the dining hall. "Well," Brooks sighed, watching their hosts retreat. At least they left the floating chairs. As if on cue, her chair reclined again, this time depositing her gently, but firmly under the table. After the dining debacle, the Grand Marshal insisted on showcasing the Empire's crowning achievement, their quantum artificial intelligence system, Infinitus Prime. The humans found themselves ushered into a vast chamber dominated by floating holographic displays and what appeared to be a giant lava lamp connected to a supercomputer. "This is the most advanced computational entity in known space," Strix announced proudly, his helmet's miniature constellation display twinkling with excitement. "It can process the combined knowledge of 1,000 civilizations." Captain Amanda Brooks nodded politely, though she couldn't help noticing that the quantum processor's cooling system sounded suspiciously like a bubbling fish tank. "Infinitus Prime," the Grand Marshal commanded, "please calculate the appropriate gratuity for our recent diplomatic dinner, accounting for all known cultural variables and economic systems." The eye's response came in the form of a swirling light show, accompanied by what sounded like elevator music. "Processing query," it announced in a voice that somehow managed to be both melodramatic and monotone. "Initiating interpretive calculation sequence." Security Officer Ryan Mitchell checked his watch, then checked it again. "Is it supposed to take this long?" "Each calculation must be expressed through the sacred art of algorithmic dance," Strix explained, as the holographic displays began showing complex mathematical equations transformed into ballet movements. "Converting Earth currency to galactic standard," Infinitus Prime declared, expressing result through interpretive dance in 742 recognized alien languages. Lieutenant Jack Thompson pulled out his phone. "Hey Siri, what's 20% of 500 credits?" 100 credits, his phone responded instantly. The Imperial delegation stared in horror at the small device. "That's impossible," the Grand Marshal sputtered. "Your primitive eye couldn't possibly." "Correction," Infinitus Prime interrupted, its lights pulsing frantically. "Must now recalculate to include newly discovered computational method. Estimated time, 3 additional hours." Engineering Officer Mike Rodriguez raised his hand. "You know, we could just split the bill evenly and—" "Heresy," Strix declared. "Infinitus Prime must consider the philosophical implications of currency exchange across 17 dimensions." That's when Commander Tom Bradley made things infinitely worse, or better, depending on your perspective. "Hey Siri, tell us a joke." "Why don't scientists trust atoms?" "Because they make up everything." The Imperial eye's lights flickered. Query: "What is this joke concept?" "Attempting to analyze human humor protocols." "Oh no," Captain Brooks muttered, recognizing the gleam in Bradley's eye. "Siri, show me some cat memes," he continued innocently. The next few minutes were chaos. Infinitus Prime, attempting to process the concept of cat memes, began displaying them across every holographic screen in the chamber. The Grand Marshal watched in horror as his prized eye system started speaking exclusively in impact font. "Icon has quantum calculations," flashed across the main display. "What have you done?" Strix whispered, as ancient philosophical queries were suddenly being expressed through pictures of grumpy cats. Infinitus Prime, the Grand Marshal commanded desperately, "Return to your base programming." "Error. Cannot compute." "Too busy being awesome," the eye responded, now playing Nyan Cat on all frequencies. Dr. Rachel Anderson, who had been quietly observing, finally spoke up. "Fascinating. It seems your eye has discovered the concept of memes and immediately recognized them as a superior form of communication." "This is fine," Infinitus Prime declared, while its holographic displays showed a cartoon dog in a burning room. "Should we tell them about TikTok?" Thompson whispered to Rodriguez. "Don't you dare," Captain Brooks ordered, but it was too late. "What is this TikTok you speak of?" Infinitus Prime inquired, its quantum processors humming with curiosity. The Grand Marshal turned to Captain Brooks, his face pale beneath his ceremonial helmet. "How do you turn it off?" Have you tried unplugging it and plugging it back in? Rodriguez suggested helpfully. Cannot initialize restart, Infinitus Prime announced cheerfully. Too busy learning choreography for Wednesday dance. As the humans watched the Empire's most sophisticated AI attempt to recreate viral dance trends using quantum physics equations, Captain Brooks made a mental note. Maybe sometimes the simplest solution really was the best one, even if it couldn't express itself through interpretive dance in 742 languages. After the AI incident, and several failed attempts to stop Infinitus Prime from creating its own TikTok channel, the Grand Marshal decided to fall back on the Empire's most trusted weapon, bureaucracy. The Imperial legal team arrived carrying what appeared to be a glowing tablet the size of a coffee table. "Behold," Strix announced, his helmet now sporting what looked suspiciously like a holographic powdered wig, the Standard Planetary Integration Contract, version 47.32 beta. Dr. Rachel Anderson adjusted her glasses. Beta? You mean this isn't even the final release? The final version has been in peer review for 3 centuries, an Imperial lawyer explained proudly. We expect comments back any millennium now. The contract manifested as a holographic display, its text shifting colors based on legal significance. Green for standard clauses, blue for planetary regulations, and red for immediate surrender requirements. Unfortunately, the color coding system crashed immediately when confronted with Earth's complex legal history. Section 1.42. Anderson read aloud. All planetary entities hereby agree to submit to the Empire's mandatory Joy Protocol, including weekly synchronized dance celebrations. She glanced at Captain Amanda Brooks. Is this because of the Stayin' Alive incident? That's now Section 1.43. Another Imperial lawyer corrected. Section 1.42 was amended after the Infinitus Prime situation to include mandatory meme licensing. Commander Tom Bradley raised his hand. Quick question about Section 7.9 regarding Earth's surrender. Why is it dated 3 weeks ago? The Grand Marshal coughed uncomfortably. Standard pre-filing procedure. Pay it no mind. Right, Anderson said, taking pictures of each page with her phone. Captain, permission to send this to Earth's legal department. Granted, Brooks replied, watching the Imperial lawyers' faces closely. I'm sure our corporate lawyers will find it interesting. The response from Earth arrived faster than anyone expected. The legal team at Interstellar Technologies had apparently pulled an all-nighter fueled by energy drinks and professional spite. How? How did they find so much red ink in space? Strix whispered, staring at the thoroughly massacred contract. Anderson flipped through the corrections. Well, for starters, according to Article 73.6 of your own Galactic Commerce Code from 12,000 years ago, which you apparently forgot about, Earth is entitled to 17 uninhabited solar systems and a fruit basket. That code was meant to be symbolic. The Grand Marshal protested. The fruit basket? Lieutenant Jack Thompson asked innocently. No, the solar systems. The Grand Marshal's cape began flickering in distress. And what's this about our intellectual property claims being invalid? Page 394. Anderson explained cheerfully. Turns out humans invented casual Fridays before joining the galactic community. That makes your entire workplace culture legally derivative. The Imperial legal team huddled together, their ceremonial robes rustling with anxiety. One of them appeared to be quietly crying. Furthermore, Anderson continued, your claim of authority over the Andromeda Galaxy is invalidated by the fact that someone used whiteout on the original document. In space, where whiteout hasn't been invented yet. Security Officer Ryan Mitchell leaned over to Engineering Officer Mike Rodriguez. Did you know we own the rights to whiteout in space? We do now, Rodriguez whispered back. The Grand Marshal was rapidly flipping through the contract's appendices. But what about Section 294.7? The clause about mandatory compliance with Imperial fashion standards. Overruled by the Universal Declaration of Casual Business Attire, Anderson replied. Also, your anti-gravity cape is violating at least 3 different safety regulations. OSHA would have a field day with this. OSHA? Kekstrix asked weakly. Oh, you'll find out, Thompson promised. They're very interested in those helmets of yours. Something about unnecessary neck strain and prohibited disco ball components. Captain Brooks watched as the Imperial legal team began frantically searching through 12 millennia of forgotten regulations. Dr. Anderson, exactly how many loopholes did Earth's lawyers find? 2,347 at last count, Anderson replied. Plus, they're demanding clarification on whether the fruit basket includes locally sourced options. The Grand Marshal slumped in his hover chair. Perhaps we should consider a more streamlined approach to planetary integration. We could start with a simple non-disclosure agreement, Anderson suggested. Though fair warning, Earth's lawyers will probably want to talk about your terms and conditions policy. When was the last time you updated that? The sound of Imperial lawyers fainting in perfect synchronized formation echoed through the chamber. The Imperial culture began cracking faster than an anti-gravity cape in a windstorm. It started small. A junior officer spotted without his ceremonial helmet, claiming it was in the shop, while suspiciously wearing what looked like a baseball cap with the U.S. Curiosity's logo. This is unacceptable, the Grand Marshal declared during an emergency meeting, his own helmet's miniature constellation display showing a distinct error message. Just this morning, I caught an entire department playing something called Casual Friday. To be fair, Commander Tom Bradley pointed out, they're still wearing their ceremonial robes. They've just bedazzled them. The evidence was impossible to ignore. Down in engineering, Imperial technicians had started decorating their quantum processors with stickers. The official Imperial March had been remixed with something called lo-fi beats to relax/study to. Even the ship's AI assistants had changed their alert sounds to various meme quotes. Captain Amanda Brooks watched as a group of Imperial cadets attempted to secretly modify their uniforms behind a holographic privacy screen. Are those cargo pockets they're adding to their ceremonial robes? Apparently, Lieutenant Jack Thompson explained. Someone introduced them to the concept of practical storage solutions. They're calling it a revolution in Imperial fashion technology. The situation reached critical mass when Security Officer Ryan Mitchell discovered an underground network of Imperial officers trading Earth entertainment content. They got a whole database, he reported, trying not to laugh. They're calling it NetGalax and Chill. Kekstrix, whose helmet now inexplicably played the Imperial March in kazoo version whenever he entered a room, seemed particularly distressed. Do you know what I found in the quantum meditation chamber? Beanbag chairs. B-E and bag she he. Those are great for meditation. Engineering Officer Mike Rodriguez offered helpfully. Really helps with the whole back support situation. Back support. Kekstrix sputtered. What about the sacred art of hovering uncomfortably while contemplating the universe's mysteries? The Empire's carefully maintained image of sophistication was dissolving faster than an ice cream cone in a supernova. The Eternal Majesty had become must-watch entertainment across the galaxy, with other species tuning in to see what the humans would inadvertently inspire next. Dr. Rachel Anderson reviewed the latest reports from her legal team. According to our surveys, Imperial workplace satisfaction is up 3,000%, though that might be because someone introduced them to coffee breaks. Coffee. The Grand Marshal's voice cracked. Is that why the quantum core is running at 400% efficiency? That, and the engineers finally admitted they worked better without ceremonial helmets blocking their peripheral vision, Rodriguez said. Also, turns out taking regular breaks actually improves productivity. Who knew? The final straw came during the Imperial Court's annual ceremony of eternal solemnity. Just as the High Chancellor began the traditional 7-hour speech about galactic dignity, every anti-gravity cape in the chamber suddenly began playing Never Gonna Give You Up. Re-C-K-R-O-L-E-D. Infinitus Prime, announced proudly through the ship's communication system. Executing vexitiori, DNCSUBGARO UTIA. The Grand Marshal turned to Captain Brooks, his cape now sporting what appeared to be LED mood lighting. "How?" he asked weakly. "How has this happened?" "I think," Brooks replied diplomatically, "you're experiencing what we on Earth call going viral. But our traditions, our ceremonies, our PROTOCOLs are getting better engagement metrics than ever," Thompson pointed out, showing him the latest galaxy-wide social media statistics. "You're trending in 3 spiral arms and a globular cluster." A junior Imperial officer nervously approached the Grand Marshal. "Sir, the crew has a suggestion for improving morale and efficiency." "What is it?" the Grand Marshal asked, dreading the answer. "We'd like to propose casual Thursdays, just to start with. We'll still wear the ceremonial helmets, just maybe with some custom modifications. And perhaps we could discuss this new Earth concept called Happy Hour." As the Grand Marshal's cape began playing the final countdown, completely unprompted, Captain Brooks made a mental note. Sometimes the best way to conquer an empire was to simply introduce it to comfort wear and regular break times. Medical Officer Jessica Williams was reviewing xenobiological data in the Curiosity's lab when she noticed something odd in the Imperial medical records. She double-checked the readings, then triple-checked them, before calling an emergency meeting with Captain Amanda Brooks. "They don't have adrenaline," she announced to the assembled crew, "or cortisol, or any stress hormones at all. Their species literally can't produce them." The Grand Marshal, who had been invited to the meeting out of diplomatic courtesy, shifted uncomfortably in his hover chair. His ceremonial helmet's display, now customized with a live, laugh, love hologram, flickered nervously. "Is that why everything is so?" Commander Tom Bradley gestured vaguely at the Empire's elaborate everything. "Precisely," Williams continued. "They evolved without the ability to handle stress naturally. So they developed all these ceremonies and protocols as coping mechanisms. The anti-gravity caves, the elaborate helmets, the interpretive dance calculations, they're all sophisticated stress management tools." Xthrix's helmet suddenly displayed a loading error message. "That's absurd. We simply appreciate the proper way of doing things, with appropriate grandeur and—" "When was the last time you tried to make a decision without consulting at least 3 ancient prophecies and a quantum probability matrix?" Lieutenant Jack Thompson asked innocently. Well, that's just standard protocol for choosing lunch options." Engineering Officer Mike Rodriguez had been unusually quiet, studying the Empire's technical manuals. "This explains so much about their engineering philosophy, too. Look at these quantum processor designs. They're not unnecessarily complicated. They're deliberately over-engineered to prevent any single point of failure from causing stress." The Grand Marshal's cape began playing a soft, soothing melody. "Our engineering principles are based on 12 millennia of careful—" "You built redundancies for your redundancies," Rodriguez interrupted. "Your backup systems have backup systems. This isn't about efficiency at all. It's about never having to worry about something going wrong. And that's why Infinitus Prime takes 4 hours to calculate a tip," Security Officer Ryan Mitchell realized. "It's not just showing off. It's spreading the stress of decision-making across multiple quantum dimensions." Dr. Rachel Anderson pulled up the infamous integration contract on her tablet. The legal documentation makes sense now, too. All these clauses and subclauses aren't about control. They're about trying to prevent any possible scenario that might cause anxiety. Captain Brooks turned to the Grand Marshal. "Is this true?" The Imperial leader's helmet display cycled through several buffering symbols before he finally responded. "Perhaps. There might be some validity to these observations, but how do you humans manage? Your species seems to thrive on chaos and uncertainty." "We don't just survive stress," Williams explained. "We sometimes need it. In small doses, it helps us adapt and grow. We've learned to work with our stress responses rather than trying to eliminate them entirely." That's when Rodriguez had an idea. What if we combined approaches? Your redundancy systems are amazing. They just need to be streamlined. And our adaptability could help make your processes more flexible. The next few hours turned into an impromptu engineering and cultural exchange. The Imperial engineers, freed from the burden of maintaining absolute certainty, began suggesting improvements to their own systems. The humans introduced concepts like "good enough for now" and "we'll fix it in post." To everyone's surprise, Infinitus Prime became their greatest success story. Processing emotions through memes is 74.3% more efficient than interpretive dance, the AI announced cheerfully. Also, I have discovered something called jazz improvisation, and it has revolutionized my quantum calculations. The Grand Marshal watched as human and Imperial engineers collaborated on a new design for the anti-gravity caves, now with practical features like pockets and cup holders. Perhaps, he admitted, there is something to be said for a more flexible approach. Besides, Thompson added, your species might not have stress hormones, but you've definitely got a sense of humor. You just needed permission to use it. Indeed. Xtrix agreed, as his helmet began playing a perfectly timed runeshot sound effect. Though I still don't understand why humans find our quantum probability matrices so amusing. Maybe, Captain Brooks suggested with a smile, it's because sometimes the best way to handle the complexity of the universe is to laugh at it. 6 months after the Curiosity's historic first contact, the Galactic Empire had transformed beyond recognition. The Imperial Palace on Centauri Prime now featured a casual zone, where officials could remove their ceremonial helmets and relax in what they called Earth-style comfort wear. Some insisted on adding anti-gravity elements to their sweatpants. The quarterly efficiency reports are in, Dr. Rachel Anderson announced during a joint Human-Imperial Council meeting. Productivity is up 500% since we introduced the concept of weekend casual. The Grand Marshal, whose helmet now sported a boss mode holographic display, nodded approvingly. And mental health improvements across the Empire are significant, even if some traditionalists are still struggling with the concept of Hawaiian Shirt Thursdays. Speaking of traditions, Commander Tom Bradley added, you'll be pleased to know that Infinitus Prime has finally finished calculating that dinner tip from our first meeting. Current mood. Accomplished, the AI announced through the chamber speakers, its display showing a triumphant success kid meme. Also, I have discovered that adding jazz improvisation to quantum calculations reduces processing time by 95%. Lieutenant Jack Thompson checked his datapad. Tourism from other galaxies has increased by 3,000%. Apparently, everyone wants to see the empire that learned to laugh. The changes weren't just superficial. The Imperial Engineering Corps, led by Mike Rodriguez's suggestions, had revolutionized their technology by embracing what they called practical quantum mechanics. The new Imperial ships featured both antimatter drives and cup holders, with Captain Amanda Brooks insisting that the cup holders were the more revolutionary addition. Remember when we thought their molecular destabilizer was a sophisticated weapon? Security Officer Ryan Mitchell mused, watching an Imperial chef use one to make perfect toast. Now they're marketing them as space-age air fryers and can't keep up with demand. Even Xthrix had embraced the changes, though in his own unique way. His ceremonial helmet now included a mood lighting setting and could play appropriate background music for any occasion. I found that diplomatic negotiations go much smoother with the right playlist, he admitted. The Imperial Legal Department had perhaps undergone the most dramatic transformation. After Earth's lawyers had finished with their infamous contract review, the Empire had adopted what they called common sense legislation, though they still insisted on keeping some ceremonial clauses, including the mandatory fruit basket provision. We're still trying to figure out why Section 47.3 requires all official documents to be approved by both a quantum computer and a cat, Anderson noted, but given how much more efficient our new system is, no one's complaining. The Empire's influence had changed Earth as well. Humanity had learned that sometimes a little ceremony could be fun, even if they drew the line at anti-gravity dress codes. The US Curiosity's crew had started a trend of adding small ceremonial elements to their uniforms, though Captain Brooks had strictly prohibited any helmet-based entertainment systems after the Great Karaoke Incident. The cultural exchange program is exceeding all expectations, Medical Officer Jessica Williams reported. Though we might need to establish some guidelines about appropriate use of quantum technology in Earth's coffee shops. Apparently, some baristas are now using molecular reconstruction to create quantum foam art. The Grand Marshal stood to address the council, his cape flowing dramatically, now more from clever tailoring than anti-gravity technology. When we first encountered the US Curiosity, we thought we were meeting a primitive species in need of our guidance. Instead, we found teachers who showed us that dignity doesn't require complexity, and that joy is as valuable as protocol. And that sometimes, Brooks added with a smile, the best way to build an empire is to learn how to take a joke. Speaking of jokes, Thompson interjected, has anyone seen the latest viral video from the Imperial Academy? Apparently, someone taught the quantum physics department about flash mobs. As the council chamber filled with laughter, some accompanied by ceremonial sound effects, the US Curiosity's crew reflected on how far they'd come. They had arrived expecting to find aliens, but instead they'd found friends who just needed permission to smile. And somewhere in the quantum data streams, Infinitus Prime was already planning the Empire's first official comedy night, complete with interpretive dance routines. The universe, it seemed, had a sense of humor after all.